listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts. Welcome to my show. This is the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over and see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. And yes, tonight we are not doing a live stream over on the YouTube solely and leaving out Odyssey Radio, our home stay. So tonight you can find us over in audio format over on Odyssey Radio. You can join them there. Or if you'd like to come and see the video simulcast of this show, come on over to my YouTube channel. Join the live chat room filled with Intrepids that's going on right now. And join the conversation. And you can watch my ugly mug talking about all this stuff while you're sitting at your computer and doing other things. If you're driving or if you're just listening, the audio stream is good too. You can listen to them both at the same time. And so, thanks for being here, no matter how you're joining us. And if you're joining the YouTube channel, do subscribe and hit the join button, which is down underneath the screen. I think YouTube may have finally resolved this issue with claiming that I was making copyright infringements. It took them I started broadcasting with the new tunes for the intro and the ads and the exit of this show back on December 10th. And for nearly a month now, they have been making a claim every day against this show, even though I own a license to use that music. And so bringing that out into the public, you hate having to bring that up. Sometimes shows will just stop using it and move on. There was a principle here for me. They continued to put copyright claims against me every day, even though every day I would dispute their claim. And so now it appears to be in the clear. At least a dozen shows have been cleared. So if you see a copyright claim, if you see any of my videos that has the intro music and there's no join button, it's because they've made another copyright claim despite clearing the claim for the same two pieces of music in every other video I put up using it. So blah, 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 blah. There that is. I hate this kind of stuff, and I think YouTube and other online sources should get their shit together a little better, especially when they are preventing videos from monetization or allowing people to join your memberships through them. So there we go. There it is. All that to say, you can now become a member. Hit the join button down below. It should be there. And you'll see 3 different levels of membership you can join. If you want to do that, go ahead and take a look, see the perks you'll get. And that's over here on the Intrepid Radio Show at youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And there's over 350 archived videos of this show on Odyssey Radio and the live chat rooms, which you can't join anymore because they're recorded chat rooms. You can go view the chat room as the show goes on, but you cannot participate in that. You can only comment on the videos below once they're in archive. So thanks for being here. Let's move on. Today, I got some things I want to talk about, yes, here it is again, folks, the election fraud and the claims of fraud. Right now, over the weekend, you have seen all this caterwauling about President Donald Trump and his phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, and it's being colored everywhere, all over the press. They're wallpapering their toilets with it. It's being used so much. They're talking about how Donald Trump has committed an act of treason, and it's illegal. He's pushing for voter fraud. He's asking the Georgia Secretary of State to find almost 12,000 votes for him. This is fraud. He's looking for fraudulent votes. Nothing could be further from the truth, folks. This is the first question I want to ask you, and I've asked this several people I've talked to about this issue. Consider for a moment the last 2 months of President Trump and all those who support him claiming that there was election fraud, election tampering, that there were irregularities in the election, all of this stuff. And you tell me how much the mainstream media, the MSM, as we like to call it in initials, how much reporting have they done on the claims of the fraud, the claims of what the evidence is? Nothing. They're silent on that. They talk about the president's fraudulent claims. The president's been disproven. He's been kicked out of court in every time he's tried to run it, which is not true either. By the way, there is not a single court case where any of the evidence has been able to be presented. In every case that's been presented to court, it has been turned down perfunctorily before it even has a chance to have the evidence presented to the court. It's been turned down on technicalities, on paperwork problems, on moving it to a different court, on, there's a judge dismisses it before he even hears evidence, saying there's no merit, and so without the evidence being presented. So the evidence has not been presented in court. The case has been filed, but it has been turned down, rejected, turned away, dismissed before evidence is even presented. In every single case. Yet you've got the mainstream media not interested in being tenacious about reporting, tenacious about seeking it. Let's dig into these claims of election fraud. Let's look into all of this in great detail. Let's do every one of these news outlets out there. Let's do an examination report on this. Let's carry this out and see if there was fraud. Instead, you see them jumping like rabid dogs all over this one recording of the president talking to the Georgia Secretary of State, because they can draw out of that. They try to persuade the American public that he was there trying to, what's the word I want to use? To create, what they're saying is that the president is asking the Georgia Secretary of State to create fraudulent votes. Find me 12,000 votes. And they're claiming that this is fraud, that he's asking him to engage in election fraud, which is not what he's doing. Any of you ever go to school? Did you ever go to high school? Were you ever in a high school speech class where you had to make your speeches and you had to learn what was a speech to persuade or a speech to debate or so on? There was always that idea that we had to uphold and persuade with our words what we wanted the other party to believe. Take that model for a second and say the President of the United States, in talking to the Georgia Secretary of State, is telling him, basically, you know that this election was stolen. I need you to find at least 12,000 votes that belonged to me and make sure I get them in your state. That's what he's saying. Uncover the fraud. It ain't rocket science, folks, but it is certainly something that the press and a lot of people out there in social media are trying to convince you that the president was committing fraud. And you do not see the same kind of censorship on those claims on social media as you see on somebody wanting to talk about something that supports the president and his claims of election fraud. So this is a problem for me. I'm looking at one right here. It's from somebody that I know from the festival, my old festival days. He starts out and he says, since the election, I've mostly refrained from posting about politics, but I haven't been ignoring it. And by the way, I want to say about this person, if you were listening to this, you know who I'm talking about. He's a good man. He's a very good man. I like him a lot. But we just have different political views. He said, a sitting president just got caught on tape trying to get a Secretary of State to alter election results. And the majority of his own party probably even believes he was right to do so. And so on and so forth. This is what I'm seeing people write. Somebody else that some of you might know, I'll just state it, it's Aaron Sagers. He worked with me on the Ghost Hunters Paramag, TAPS Paramag. And he and I have gone around a couple of times online about politics. I like Aaron a lot. I think he's very cool. He does great paranormal reporting. He's a great thinker. Overall, in general, I respect this man. I disagree with him on politics. So let me state it that way. And I want you to listen to something that he wrote and I responded to, and many others are responding to. He said, "This period is insane, period. We are witnessing the President of the United States engage in election fraud." Stop, full stop before I go on. He's not reporting the news. He's not objectively reporting what's being said. He is stating a fact. He is saying, in his point of view, we are witnessing the President of the United States engaging in election fraud. He's undermining the will of the voters. He's intimidating a Secretary of State, and he is enabled by craven politicians who can honestly argue that this is not wrong. Who can honestly argue that this is not wrong, he asks. Who can still support such corruption? And I responded to him with a lot of other people. There's a lot of people responding with, "You go, Aaron. There are no words. This is bordering on intimidation. Probably one of the most honest things has ever been said while in office. I just want to find 11,780 votes. Yes, I'm sure you do. Senators Hawley and Cruz and others are complicit with this behavior. This must stop. I am not a fan of Trump or politics in general. Voter identification IDs would stop all of this." I agree with that. "I am opposed to this," somebody else said, "because it would disenfranchise voters." Whatever. What the F ever. Voter ID. Get voter ID. Make it a requirement. Make it free for people who can't afford it, who really can't afford the $10 or $12 or $16 they're going to want to charge to make a little laminate card and put your name on file as being a voter in the United States. So if you can't afford that, the country should make it available for federal votes, federal elections. So blah, blah, blah. On and on and on it goes. Everybody agreeing, kissing ass on this idea. Nobody I see taking the press to account for saying, why are they like hound dogs all over this? What the president just did with the Georgia Secretary of State, but they haven't entertained or given any credence to any of the other anomalies that have been pointed out over the last 2 months. I said to Aaron, Aaron, I would have loved to see your objective journalistic tenacity in writing about the mountains of election fraud and irregularities charged by the POTUS. Instead, you're an attack dog on any remnant of table scrap you might find that supports your point of view. And then I said, now, like me, you're a vociferous, heartfelt supporter of what you believe. Not an objective reporter of fact. Now, I can say that about myself. I'm not objective in this. I try to rise above the fray, but I'm not objective. I have my personal point of view. I heard what the president said in that recording, I went on, and before the controversy even started, I heard him pushing and pressing for more of the fraudulent votes to be uncovered, not for a fabrication of fraudulent votes. For you and me, it all goes back to who you believe at the core of the matter. At the core of the matters is seeking. Hold on, I wrote this clunky. For you and me, it all goes back to who you believe at the core of the matters, and who is at the core of the matters is seeking fact as opposed to tampering with a free election. It's funny to me that I see the press overtly ignoring 2 months' worth of evidence and irregularities while jumping like rabid canines on this recording and reporting it in such a way as to sway public opinion rather than to allow people to simply make up their minds. Trump incorporated with the Georgia Secretary of State the same tactics we all use when attempting to persuade and convince. You can use slightly saltier words and refer to it as pressuring and pressing. Do you think it's because perhaps the president felt that the Secretary of State in Georgia wasn't doing his duty? Or at least in the president's view? I am not floating above the fracas looking back in, as I've already admitted. But I do attempt to view things in the light of reality as opposed to simply supporting my political desires, wishes, and dreams. If President Trump was attempting to persuade the Georgia Secretary of State to commit election fraud, which is treasonous, then nail Trump's ass to the nearest wall. If he was attempting to persuade the Georgia Secretary of State to dig deeper into what he believed was actual perpetrated fraud, then support that effort the same way as you would if it was somebody you supported being in the office. This swings both ways. Facts are stubborn things. And whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. So said John Adams. And with that, I'm going to encourage you, when you hear this stuff, to figure out whether or not you're going to go along with what the press wants you to think, because the press is mostly leaning against Trump. They've always been against him. Or are you going to go with what you know to probably be the truth of the matter? And I put up something here. It was a quote of Mark Twain's that I got from a friend of mine, C. Adams, over on Facebook. She put up this quote of Mark Twain's. In the beginning of a great national change, the patriot is a scarce man and brave, and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs them nothing to be a patriot. Mark Twain said that. So figure out where you fall on that line, that timeline, and figure out what it is, where it is you stand and what you believe. Boom. Leave it at that. Let's go into some spark courage for today. Some 50 ways to be bold. I like to do these in every show. We're already 17 minutes into the show, so we'll probably wrap with this, and then we'll get to our topic of Enoch in the second period, the second hour. Here we go. Here's one we have not had. Practice powerful body language. Shoulders back, chin up, body open. You see that? That's what it says. Practice powerful body language. Shoulders back, chin up, body forward. Is that what it says? Body forward? Yeah, body open. Now, something I learned a long time ago when I talk to people, when I give a public address, when I talk even here on radio, sometimes I'm guilty of, you can lean down and you can hunker down. I even had somebody tell me once very early on, hey, make sure you're up, your chin is high, your shoulders are back, your chest is out, your body forward. You're opening yourself up for people. Let me ask you, when you talk to people, when you present your case in something, when you're trying to persuade, or just when you're trying to be you, are you out there, are you sheltered? My young son, my son Flynn, this is something I notice about him, and I'm only mildly concerned as a dad. He's only 11. He'll come out of this. It took me a long time to come out of my own shell. But many times I see him, he stands like, here, I'll veer the camera down so you can see what I'm doing. Many times he'll stand like this. And he doesn't uncross his hands. It's because he's holding things in. He's a little bit nervous. He's a little bit afraid. He's a little bit timid. And he holds that in. I say, Flynn, take your hands. Put your hands down. So roll your shoulders back, head up high. I said, chest out, body forward. And I said, do this so that you exude to the public around you, to people you're meeting, that not that I'm Flynn, but that I'm Flynn, damn it. That's the way. My shoulders back, my chest out, body forward. So how do you be bold when you present yourself to people? How do you be bold when you're talking? Sit and put yourself forward. Head up, head high, chin down, shoulders back, chest out, body forward, open. Hey, I'm here. It's either I'm here, listen to what I have to say. Hi, I'm here. My name is Barbie D. My name is Field Guy. My name is Doug. My name is Matt Finn. Whoever you are. This is me. This is who I am. and you present yourself that way. If you're being persuasive, if you're in an argument, a debate, it's like, hey, come on, come and get me. I'll tell you exactly what's so. Confidence, folks. Use your confidence to promote who you are, what you believe, how you are. That, to me, that's boldness. That's courage. You don't have to be loud. You can be quiet. You can be quiet and exude those things. If I were to say to you, if I were to come to you and I were to say, this is kind of what I want you to believe, and I want you to think about this thing, whatever it might be that we're talking about. Or if I came to you and I said, I had my head up, shoulders back, chest out, body forward, and I said, hey, this thing that we're talking about, I'd like you to consider this. I'd like you to think about this. Blah, 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 whatever my point may be. And so presentation physically helps underscore your boldness, your courage, your courageousness, your ability to present yourself well. When I'm in an interview, do I want to intimidate people? No. But when I'm in an interview with a client, or I've had 5 times in the last year, I've had producers from television shows call me up and want to do a video interview for a potential new series where they're looking for either a talking head or a historian or a lead for a show or whatever it might be. In every one of those cases, only one of those ever came to fruition, and that was the one on the Bermuda Triangle where I went and talked. But I get on these video calls, and if I presented myself like this, sheepish and my head down, or hunched, and I'm hunched and I'm talking like this and so on, that gets me nowhere. So you present yourself. You present yourself well. You put your body forward. You're confident in your speech, the way you talk, the way you act, what you say, what you do. I had somebody call me the other day that wanted to interview me to be part of their, it was children's book publishing, part of their in-house staff, putting together new books for around the world. And I got on there and I found out in the first 30 seconds, it was an unpaid internship position. And I stopped, and I wasn't nasty or anything, but I said, now wait. And I was looking at him on the video. I said, you're asking me to head up and learn the ropes at your company to present all of this stuff on an international scale, and you don't want to pay me for, and he said 9 months? I said, I can't work for you for 9 months. I said, you came to me because you said you liked my resume. I said, so my resume should tell you I don't need an internship period for 9 months. They were just looking for somebody free. And in a polite way, I put my boldness forward, and I was able to, say, hey, no, this is where I stand on this issue, and I don't think I can do that for you. Not sheepish, just straightforward. Hey, I'm as straightforward as you are asking for it. So there's the encouragement. As we go out to break, go into your days and hold yourself high. Put your shoulders back. Put your head up. Head up. Shoulders back. Chest out. Your body forward. And that's going to promote your boldness and the way you talk to other people. And on an up note, if you're my wife and you have big boobs, it's fantastic to look at. She's not here to kick me in the butt, so I can say that. That wasn't off-colored, folks. That was just an appreciator of my wife, and to lighten it up a little bit. So let's go out to break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, and we're going to get into Enoch. Sit tight.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
All right, gang, we're back from that break. Thanks for sitting there and waiting. This is Scotty Roberts. You're watching my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Intrepid radio program. Now, that was a little like that scene from Ghostbusters, the first one where Dan Aykroyd says something like, "Look, listen, do you hear that? Look," or whatever it was, whatever the line was. So I just said, you're here watching the radio show. So, in a sense, you are if you're watching the video over my YouTube channel, because you're watching what's going on over the radio airwaves at Odyssey. Odyssey is ODYSY1.com. Come on over and enjoy all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. At the same time, you can come right here to my YouTube channel and watch the video simulcast. You can join the live channel of Intrepheads that are already chatting up a storm. And you can also join my channel while you're there. Become a member. Click on the join button. You'll see 3 ways to become a member and the perks you'll get for it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening and watching. And let's move on. We were talking for over a week. What was it, 2 weeks now? We've been talking about the holy language. Remember, that's where we started. Talking about the language, the holy language. The language that would be the initial, original language. A language that you can support this mathematically by looking at the way the language was put together and incorporated, the way the language was used, the way that it matches in many ways in its alphabetical forms, the art of it. We took it to Enoch, how Enoch was the first, at least according to biblical text, which is, people say, oh, it's all just fairy tales. Well, it's as old as just about any other text that talks about history and mingles its mythology with it. Do you know, even as late as Henry VIII, Elizabeth I, and after that, they all incorporated their religion into their official documents. And so you can't say that biblical text is all fallacy, all made up thousands of years ago or subsequently, because it has religious content. You can't say that. So we're presuming for this series, this little set of lessons on the holy language, that the biblical text has some efficacy to it. We look at the book of Enoch. It establishes that Enoch, at least in the biblical text, is one of the earliest books written. The book that was found was written much later, but like the books of the Septuagint, they were all copies anyway of the originals that were written hundreds and thousands of years earlier. The Septuagint being the Greek translation of the New Testament, or the Old Testament, that we have today in our Old Testaments that you find in a Bible that might just be sitting on the shelf in your house. So the Septuagint was written the same way. They're all rewrites of older books because the original books were gone. Enoch, no different. It's a much older book. It speaks of things that happen in the biblical chronology, the earliest recorded events in human history, according to biblical writ. And so in those texts, it establishes that Enoch was the guy that was given the original holy language from God, or the Creator, the originator of all things. that he was given this language, that he was the first to write it down. He was the first to use it. He was the first to be given units and measures and to be able to build things and architect. And from his knowledge came the ability to build things like the Tower of Babel in that story. The separating of languages, which goes back to there being a holy language, and then a language that's brought in to confound the holy language. We talked about all of this stuff resonates. It all has vibrancy on frequency, the spoken word. We've talked about how the biblical text many places refers back to the beginning being spoken into existence. In the New Testament even, it talks about in the book of John, in the beginning God, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. It was the spoken word, the original language. So all of that is a basis. We left off talking about Enoch, the Great Pyramid. What was the Great Pyramid used for? Why is it important to link Enoch to it? The ability of the Great Pyramid to perhaps have frequency and to be able to broadcast that frequency around the world. Its placement in the middle of the earth or the center of the land masses. So several clues suggested that it might have been achieved. We left off at talking about how did the Great Pyramid do this? How would it send out a frequency worldwide? The idea was the force of thrusting water. There was an abundant source of the Nile River, but it was quickly realized that the river tended to move. It moved, it shifted, and it rose during inundation and it went down. And so this is what happens. So the Nile River rises and lowers. It couldn't be depended on to do so consistently. And Egyptian cities were built around urban areas. And within these areas, the Nile evaporated completely during certain parts of the year. And Enoch devised the Great Pyramid by this theory so that it would allow water to always be available by sending the frequency signal for rain or drought, not just locally, but to the entire landmass of the earth, depending on how strong or hard the frequency. Now, this seems really far-fetched, but you can look at the science of it and say, I get that. Connecting whether or not that's what really happened is the more difficult part. And besides the far-reaching capabilities of this device, the Great Pyramid, Enoch also devised the Great Pyramid to be a local water pump. And this is where I say we've got to talk to Stephen Myers, because he's got a great theory worked out on this. You can go find him on my friends page on my Facebook, Stephen Myers, Meyers. Talk to him about the Great Pyramid. And he'll gladly talk to you about the Great Pyramid. And so they devised the Great Pyramid to be a local water pump, ensuring that the Great Pyramid would always have water to facilitate its power. And in addition to its function as a calendar, it would also guarantee good harvests and the survival of the human race. When you look at the work of John Anthony West and Dr. Robert Schoch, who talk about the Sphinx right there in front of the Sphinx of Giza, in front of the of Giza, I said Visa, that it has watermarks all over it, signs of there having been ancient water inundation there. And to understand how Enoch designed this amazing device, it's necessary to understand how the Hebrew letter Ain was utilized by first analyzing its purpose as a water pump. Now, modern technology concerning fluid dynamics and a hydraulic water pump reveals that water could be propelled upward by opening valve 1 and closing valve 2. No electricity needed, no energy source. You just open and shut your valves. Then valve 2 opens with valve 1 closed. And the resulting pumping action sends water up to the top pipe to the higher level. And the outlay is very similar to the Great Pyramid. And you can see that, remember we took the letter Ain and we showed from a top view how the passages were all laid out. Now I'm going to show you a quick diagram here. And we're going to talk about this. Let me find where I've got it and turn it on. Boom! Right here. Now, here you see, you can read around this chart, but you see that letter Ain That's the passageways in the form of the Ain, and you see the water moat in the blue there, out front and all around the pyramid, and how the water was sucked up in and through. This secondary clue is found as Egyptologists took notice of remnant traces of the existing rim that once surrounded and enclosed the Great Pyramid. And I showed you some pictures of that. Let's see. I think I've got it here somewhere. Let me see if I can find this. The Giza Channel. Well, there's the channel. There's the quarry that's around the base of the pyramid. They say the quarry where they pull all the stones. This is also thought to have been a reservoir that goes around the pyramid. Take a look at that for a minute. This is the entryway to it. You got the causeway, which we're in there. I think that might be the only one I have of that. Okay. So right there, that gives you an idea right there what we're looking at. So we'll go back to the water flow. And the Great Pyramid, and by the way, you're not going to see this if you're listening on the radio, so you can come over and look at this anytime you want in archive over at the YouTube channel. Or you can do a little simulcast, listen on Odyssey and turn the video on. You can see this. The Great Pyramid, it's speculated that if this rim around the Great Pyramid is a moat, which could have been used to pool water. And water can be manipulated in many clever and amazing ways. And by the way, how would they keep this water filled like this? How would they keep that filled? Well, by this. This channel right here. You see that channel that is running down from the center of the pyramid, of the Great Pyramid. You see that channel, and you see where water could have been brought up from the Nile, which was not very far from this site, right here. And they could bring water up with the channels. And the Egyptians were notorious for digging channels all over the Nile River Valley. So water can be manipulated in many clever and amazing ways. And one of the ways that water can be used to create sound is by fluid and acoustical dynamics, such as when it's pulsated or rapidly flowing in a jet stream of water. When this forceful jet of water hits one of the interior limestone walls of the Great Pyramid, it also creates a sound, reverberating, deflection, or re-echo that bounces the vibrating sound off the wall, redirecting that vibration throughout the entire pyramid, and thus this vibratory sound is what is generated throughout the whole pyramid and operating the Aeon. And this process worked in partnership between the very bottom subterranean chamber that you see down there. You look at that diagram if you're watching the video, the subterranean chamber, the pit, the drain, the well in which the water could have gone into the ground as well as ascended up. So it starts there. And one other way may have been to forcibly enter to create this phenomenon, water. It was either through the main entrance or the subterranean chamber pit at the bottom that was regulated by or worked in combination with a clack valve that changed the direction of the water flow. As one can see from this diagram, this is above the main entrance of the Great Pyramid, which is actually above ground level. And the purpose for this was so that the water tunnel would have been level with the moat, the retaining wall that surrounded the base of the Great Pyramid. And as the moat around the Great Pyramid filled with water, it allowed the water to be gravity siphoned in or backwashed with great pressure into the main entrance, tunnel up through the ascending passage into the grand gallery. You can see this all on the diagram, leading to the king's chamber and the queen's passage and chamber. However, in the picture, it's shown with the water running down into the water moat. But there have also been a downward passage that connected the water flow so that it could be siphoned up and back into the pyramid's entrance. Now, this is unknown, and it's a question that arises in all of this, in this theory. And so how was the water drained from the Great Pyramid? The answer appears to be by an underground tunnel, the hollow causeway that was built underneath the main entrance and the water moat that leads to the Nile River. Again, this causeway right here Boom. That. Right down the center of the page, beneath that, is a causeway which could have drained all the water out of the temple and back into the Nile River. And if you stand right up there at the pyramid, at the base, and look back in this direction, it's all downhill, down to Giza, down to Cairo, down to the river Nile. So that was what was thought to have been how the water was drained. And there's such a logic in all of this that you can't really ignore it, or you have to state that it's an unbelievable stretch of the imagination. It becomes clear to those who understand that the Great Pyramid was constructed to project resonating sound that there's only speculation as to what effect it did have. But it's easy to see, with science rediscovering past technology, that using vibratory frequency to reform, to modify nature, to create whatever environment is needed, it's certainly grounded in fact within the science and the physics of the Great Pyramid. And another possibility is that the AN worked in combination with sending a message. The statues of the pharaohs, you see many of these. They're clasping cylinder-like objects in their hands. It looked like this. These cylinder objects. Look at this statue, and you will see the cylinder object in his hand, one of them broken off on the left side of this picture. And then you see up close of a different statue, you can see the cylinder that he's holding in his hand. And this aeon can be rediscovered in this. Discovered by Egyptologists, there are two metal cylinders made of copper and zinc and filled with quartz crystals being held in both hands. And it's said to be tuned to the Earth's natural frequency, which dictates the energy impulse to all life on the Earth, as is the Great Pyramid. And the Egyptologists believe that it was possible that the Egyptians used these cylinders for the purpose of stimulating the nervous and immune systems, as well as to help fight off diseases. Would the Egyptian pharaohs hold an object that symbolized a sign of power or deity, yet used for health purposes? Or was its real purpose linked to something of far greater influential power, such as the Great Pyramid? And another theory arises. It's possible that these metal and quartz objects, the cylinders of resonating vibration, are dispatch mechanisms that worked as an agent in conjunction with the Great Pyramid. Was the quartz crystal inside the cylinder capable of conveying information passed from the human body to the pyramid by relaying a signal originating either from human speech in Hebrew, the original language, in combination with human consciousness, similar to the vibrations of radio wave frequencies striking a crystal in a radio? It's quite possible that the pharaohs held these cylinders in a specific location within the Great Pyramid to resonate their thoughts by way of speech, as a way of sending their specific vibratory frequency signal through the limestone granite grid lines to perhaps either control the weather or the environment as needed. Now, all of this can sound pretty damn far-fetched. It's theory. This is theory. It's notion, some of it even. There's no way to prove this. But it is the speculation combined with all the other things you can look at scientifically and linguistically. And so this particular location within the Great Pyramid could have been inside the king's chamber, which I've already talked to you about when we sang up there. The vibrations in there, the resonance in there is unbelievable. You'd have to experience it to hear it and feel what it does to your body when you're singing, just striking a chord. And so the Great Pyramid could have been in this area in the Great Pyramid could have been inside the king's chamber. The stone coffer box, the sarcophagus, which is known for its peculiar acoustics, as well as the location of Pi and the golden spiral. Now, the Egyptian pharaohs were looked upon as gods in the sense that they had some kind of superior, influential power over the weather and the environment. They were entrusted, they were delegated with the welfare and the survival of Egypt. Now, after all of this, you got to look at this and you got to say, you got to wonder, is the Great Pyramid still functional? Can you still get that beneficial frequency of 6.8 hertz out of the Great Pyramid? The answer might be found in the King's Chamber, where structural damage has been observed. The roof beams, the floor stones are cracked. They're dislocated. The walls show signs of being moved outward. This damage might be attributed to an earthquake in past history. However, there does not seem to be any damage to any other chambers or passages. The structural damage may only be slight hindrances that pose no real threat, but it's still mostly intact even after all these centuries. So aside from the structural hindrances, what is optimistically evident is that the Great Pyramid still appears to apparently resonate this 6.8 hertz constant frequency, which is the Earth's most beneficial and natural healing resonance. And so this is another mystery about the Great Pyramid. Why is it still generating frequency? It's still doing it. Perhaps the Great Pyramid was built to last for something far greater. Enoch's Book of Parables 1, verses 1 through 4 says, "The book I wrote was not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come." Again, could the Great Pyramid still be functional? There's still much we don't know about it. We don't know about the Great Pyramid. It may be imperative that it remain that way as an element of surprise in the future. I don't know. When we get into that, when I say things like that too, I even feel myself cringing just a touch because we can't prove this. This is hypothetical theory about this. Most of us are familiar with the story of the Red Sea and the Egyptians. I've told it several times here in several different contexts. Pharaoh and his army chased the Israelites who had been told to leave by Pharaoh in an effort to recapture them. Neither side knew of God's plan that's recorded in the passage in the scripture, nor their fate that was to follow. And in their attempt to recapture the Israelites, the entire Egyptian army was stopped by overflowing water, which is the miracle known as the parting of the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, or the Yam Suf, and allowing the Israelites to cross on dry land. The Great Pyramid still holds its position in the world as the center of the Earth's land masses, and amidst mainstream knowledge is still functioning 6.8 hertz. Therefore, a conclusion can be reached, not the conclusion, but a conclusion, that it has this auxiliary function, that of which we're unaware, yet that might kick in when we least expect it, the element of surprise. It's a lunisolar, that's hard for me to say, lunisolar, Lunisolar. It's a moon-sun thing. It's a lunisolar calendar incorporating the Earth, sun and the moon. But it may also be a terrestrial timekeeper that's aligned with other planetary stars in our galaxy, which might be fixed to an ending date. And as you can see, that there are shafts. We didn't even talk about this. Let's see if I've got the... let's see which one it is. Well, here, even on this, you see in this diagram I'm showing you of the inner chambers of the pyramid in the Ain configuration, you see the blue lines. Those are shafts that are cut in. Those little shafts are about 8 inches by 8 inches, I think, square. And they run in straight lines, and you can see outside the pyramid with those. And on certain astronomical dates, those shafts line up with stars. So is this an astronomical calendar, which might be fixed to some kind of ending date? Exodus chapter 14, verse 9 says, "The Egyptians all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots, his horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi Hahiroth, opposite Baal Zephon. That's where they were. So you can find this place by looking at old name places. Exodus 14:13 through 16 says, Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord that he's going to bring to you this day. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Be quiet. Be quiet." There's a key. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." And the Egyptians pursued them. And what it's missing in here is that verse in between where it says, "And Moses raised the rod over the waters, and a strong east wind blew all night and parted the waters." This hails to that geographic event I talked about, with the winds blowing in off of the Negev to the northeast. Exodus 14:23 says the Egyptians pursued them into the parted waters, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. Now, on this geologic, I have to bring this up. This geologic event, which could blow the winds and part the waters of the Yam Suf. It was a naturally occurring event. It doesn't happen often, but it's been recorded as having happened. It blows so strong that it parts the waters and it reveals the higher points of dry ground beneath. Now, for all of Pharaoh's chariots and soldiers to follow the Israelites into this, if it was some magical, mystical event caused by a god in their eyes, I would think they would be remiss. There would be fighting. There would be hesitation to follow in, and it might not have happened. This may have been a natural event that has taken place there before, and they followed them in. And then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the water, so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and their horsemen." And the water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. This is that element of surprise with water, with the working of natural events. Was the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, was that structured to be something like that? Don't know for sure. All of this theorizing about Enoch building the Great Pyramid, did he have part in it with his own hands? Was he like a supervisor in charge because he had the language to do it? Only because we say the Great Pyramid isn't just the Pyramid of Cheops. It may have been one that he claimed as his own. It may be thousands of years older than Khufu or Cheops. It may have been something that stood, as they say, the Sphinx stood thousands of years before we think it did. And the water erosion, according to John Anthony West and Schock and other scientists that have looked at it, seems to indicate that these structures are much older than we thought they were. Dating back perhaps even 10,500 BCE. Time before the Great Deluge and the antediluvian world. If this is the case, maybe there's something to this. So did Enoch, in being the first to write human language, the first to disseminate language according to Scripture, the first to be given the weights and the measures, was he this incredible scientist of his day, this architect who was able to create not only the Tower of Babel, but the Great Pyramid of Egypt? It's interesting. Worth a lot more study than I've given it even here. But there it is. We'll hit this more another time. But for now, we're going to move on. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Enoch and the Freemasons. Now, this is going to be an interesting topic. You're not going to want to miss this. Where we now look at Enoch and see how he fit in with the Freemasons, the great all-seeing Aeon, the eye above the pyramid. And if you note on the back of your dollar bill, it's even separated from the pyramid, the capstone. So that'll be something of great interest, I think. Be here tomorrow, and we'll cover that. We'll start talking about it. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow night.